we start off continuing our focus on the development within the country is the state of the nation. Mr. Max Gbanite joins us today. He's a strategic security consultant. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, indeed. Interesting headlines. Still focusing on how to locate our girls and bring them back. But about that bit where the insurgent group had asked that the captured members of theirs be released. We've seen comments now coming from the president, from the Senate presidents. It's not going to happen, they say.
It should never happen.
But you have some people who say, go ahead, negotiate with them.
Who are the people?
You've heard Honorable Abikadabri. You've heard some of the Borno Elders Forum speaking up on this one.
For you, when you talk about negotiation, it means that there is a representative of opposing parties. Then you can sit down and negotiate. At this particular point in time, who will negotiate on behalf of the terrorist group?
But his argument was that initially the government said that they were faceless, but now you got some of them in detention. It means that there's a face to some of these.
Well, the people in protective custody, I've chosen that word carefully rather than using the word detention. And let me go back to the end of the Civil War. Lots of combatants were asked to come to Lagos. They were sequestered in secondary schools, some in jails, for the radicalization program. And it was in order, because federal government didn't want some people to go in and start an asymmetrical war in the East. So those people had to come in, and federal government held them. Some were held for 4 years before they were released back to the Southeast. It was a right decision then. And when they came back, they were sober enough to now find a way to make a living. You do not go and take up somebody from custody and release him. That is blackmail. They must release the children, first of all, unconditionally. The children are innocent. They had no hand in this crisis. Then after that, then we can begin the level of dialogue, where we are now going to say cessation of every hostility. And government is going to now... Dialogue is different from negotiation. And what does dialogue do? You go into those that are in detention and say, what skills do you have? What can government do to change your life so that you can be more productive? And government owes it to them. But where do you get the money to do these things? You cannot do it from the budget.
What do you say to those who are of the opinion that dialogue, negotiation shouldn't pop up now? Because you're talking about those who've taken lives. What kind of message would you be sending to others if you say, let's dialogue with them?
There is no time life is not taken in any crisis. That is the bane of crisis. Is it preventable? Perhaps. But at this particular time, it wasn't prevented.
What if they use the word murder?
Well, wars, civil war was murderous on both sides. Japan went to U.S. and dropped bombs in Honolulu. U.S. used nuclear power on Japan. Justifiable homicide. Boko Haram struck first. Federal government came in. So at the end of the day, the kinetic exchanges are bound to cost collateral damages. So what do? You look at the hardcore that are under protective custody. There are people who have this ideological state of mind that you can never change them. Then you begin to look at the process of using the law. Not even the terrorist law, but for you to pin murder on them, you have to have known that they were the ones that killed a particular person. So it makes judiciary quite interesting, the way I see it. But what do we need to do? I read this morning, Honorable Benila said something very interesting, that we should focus our energy in telling Boko Haram to release our children and not use the language, bring back our children. Who are we addressing when we use the language, bring back? It means that there is a twisted orchestration by the international community in my own view, to suggest that government is not doing enough. Government is doing what they're supposed to do. I am not a spokesman for government, but I have studied a pattern of asymmetrical war. I know that at the end of the day, either you do it the Sri Lanka way or you dialogue at some point.
But that call started locally, the Bring Back Our Girls campaign.
That's the point I'm trying to say, that would that be the right language to use? If I am kidnapped, you are now saying, bring back Max, which means you know who took me.
Well, you had said a twisted campaign from the international community, so I thought to bring that in.
It's a combination of international, and if you read Akin Retiwa's piece yesterday, they have even tried to introduce the ideation of corruption as the bane for the insurgency. And these are two independent issues that should never mix.
Let me bring this into all of this. The meeting in France and a couple of other African countries, presidents who were there. And over the weekend, on Sunday specifically, Daily Mail on Sunday, a UK paper, tabloid, with the headline, "Kidnapped Nigerian schoolgirls in new danger as freedom deal is scrapped at 11th hour." And now they're saying that by now they would have been out, but for the government's, backing down on a prisoner swap. And you're saying that we don't have a face or a representative. But reading this same tabloid, it says he had agreed to lead them off at a point in exchange of his own men, which we had agreed to, we, the country. Right. With this coming in, does that mean that we can actually get them out in a better way than this?
I'm glad you called it a tabloid, and I don't think the government of Nigeria should hide anything from us. If they are dialoguing, then let them continue to do the dialogue and maintain the international best practices. In the United States, I remember when I was a member of Reagan Initiative 807 for Caribbean activities, the issue of Angola came to fore, getting Angola to be a peaceful nation. The language used then by Ronald Reagan is that there must be a constructive engagement. And I encourage Nigerian government to go into constructive engagement. But you do not negotiate innocent children. Boko Haram and their supporters and their advisors should first of all release these children to show that they are men, that they are principled. When you release the children, then you come back on the bargaining table and say, these are what we need to do. Anything other than that should not be accepted by this government. Britain is speaking as if it never went through its own issues of asymmetry with Ireland. How did they negotiate then? There was a brutal war for 30 years until a constructive engagement was initiated, and that gave Ireland its independence. So we need to be very careful the way we do these things. After the children are given back to us, then federal government should now look at those that have been de-radicalized, that are required to be released, should be released with proper setup of business for them.